There is an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean that most people have never heard of. It has no indigenous population. It has no tourism. It has no civilian flights. You cannot book a trip there. You cannot even find it easily on a standard map. The people who were living there were forcibly removed by the British government in the 1960s so that the United States military could build a base so secret, so remote, and so strategically critical that it has supported every major American military operation from Vietnam to Iraq to Afghanistan. It stores nuclear-capable B-2 Spirit stealth bombers. It holds enough fuel and weapons to sustain combat operations across 3 continents. Simultaneously, it sits at the center of the Indian Ocean, equidistant from the Middle East, South Asia, and East Africa. American officials have called it an all but indispensable platform for global security operations. And on Friday morning, Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles at it. On Friday morning local time, Iran launched 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, a joint US-UK military base in the Indian Ocean. A U.S. official told CNN, adding that neither of them struck the base. Neither missile hit. One malfunctioned in flight, one was shot down by a U.S. warship. The base is intact and operational. But that is not the story. The story is that Iran fired those missiles at all because Diego Garcia is 4,000 kilometers from Iran. And until Friday morning, Iran had a self-imposed limit on its ballistic missiles of 2,000 kilometers. Iran just fired nearly double that range. And if Iran can reach Diego Garcia, it can reach something else that nobody in Washington or London is talking about loudly enough. It can reach Europe. Start with what Diego Garcia actually is, because most people watching this have never heard its name, and they need to understand exactly what Iran just tried to destroy. The U.S. has described the Diego Garcia base as an all but indispensable platform for security operations in the Middle East, South Asia, and East Africa. Home to about 2,500 mostly American personnel, it has supported U.S. military operations from Vietnam to Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2008, the U.S. acknowledged that it also had been used for clandestine rendition flights of terror suspects. The U.S. deployed several nuclear-capable B-2 Spirit bombers to Diego Garcia last year amid an intense airstrike campaign targeting Yemen's Houthi rebels. 2,500 American personnel, nuclear-capable B-2 bombers, clandestine operations spanning 5 decades. This is not a support base. This is the crown jewel of American power projection in the Eastern Hemisphere. Diego Garcia is part of the Chagos Archipelago, a chain of more than 60 islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean off the tip of India. The islands have been under British control since 1814, when they were ceded by France. In the 1960s and 1970s, Britain evicted as many as 2,000 people from Diego Garcia so the U.S. military could build the base there. 2,000 people removed from their homes, their island erased from the civilian map, their culture and community destroyed so that the United States could have a base so remote that no adversary could reach it until Friday. Iran launched ballistic missiles at the joint US-UK military base in Diego Garcia on Friday, demonstrating a weapons capability that goes beyond what TAN was known to have possessed. Beyond what TAN was known to have possessed. Those are Bloomberg's exact words. Iran just showed the world a weapons capability that the U.S. intelligence community did not fully account for. And the implications of that revelation stretch far beyond one remote island in the Indian Ocean. Now, the technical details of what happened because the missile used tells you everything about what Iran was actually demonstrating. The attack involved the launch of 2 ballistic missiles that failed to reach the ATAL. One malfunctioned in flight, while the other was intercepted. The incident has revealed an Iranian missile capability greater than previously estimated. Diego Garcia lies around 4,000 kilometers from Iran's coastline, double the 2,000-kilometer range that TAN has always stated officially, double. Iran's self-declared limit was 2,000 kilometers. Diego Garcia is 4,000 kilometers away. Iran tried to hit something twice as far as it admitted it could reach. Iran targeted the island with a 2-stage intercontinental ballistic missile, Israel's military said. Justin Bronk, a senior research fellow at defense think tank the Royal United Services Institute, said that the attempt to hit Diego Garcia may have involved improvised use of Iran's Seymour space launch rocket, which could offer greater range as a ballistic missile, though at the cost of reduced accuracy. The Seymour is Iran's space launch vehicle. Iran has been developing it publicly as a civilian space program. The same technology that puts satellites into orbit can be pointed downward to deliver a warhead anywhere on the planet. Iran just pointed its space rocket at the most secret American military base in the world. Jeffrey Lewis, distinguished scholar of global security at Midbury College, told CNN that Iran was developing an intercontinental ballistic missile that was reoriented to space launch after then Supreme Leader Ali Husseini Khamenei imposed a 2,000-kilometer range limit in 2017. Cam imposed the 2,000-kilometer limit in 2017. He is dead. The man who imposed that limit was killed on February 28th, and within 22 days of his death, Iran fired a missile at something 4,000 kilometers away. The limit died with Khamenei and the new supreme leader, who analysts said before the war might be more committed to Iran's weapons programs than his father, has now answered that question by action rather than words. Now, the Europe dimension, because this is the part of the story that is causing quiet panic in NATO capitals right now and deserves to be spoken out loud. Tehran claimed the strike demonstrated capabilities for long distance attacks with Diego Garcia, the same distance from Iran as much of Central Europe. The same distance as much of Central Europe. Iran just fired a missile 4,000 kilometers. Berlin is 4,100 kilometers from Tehran. Paris is 4,300 kilometers. Rome is 3,100 kilometers. Warsaw is 3,400 kilometers. Triada Parsi, the co-founder of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, told CNN that the attempted attack suggests that other bases that the U.S. thought were outside the range of Iran may actually be within the range, along with American ships that have been kept 3,000 kilometers away. Parsi also said that it does put certain European bases within their range, and he did not know if that was going to cause a rethink on the European side, but it definitely increases the risk for them. American ships that were deliberately positioned 3,000 kilometers away from Iran because commanders believed that was a safe distance. Aircraft carriers, supply vessels, the ships that are supporting this entire war from what was supposed to be a safe distance. Iran just demonstrated those ships may not be safe. And the European bases, the NATO installations in Romania where U.S. refueling planes operate. RAF Fairford in England, from which B-1 bombers launched against Iran. The bases in Cyprus, all of them are now within the demonstrated range of an Iranian missile program that removed its self-imposed limit the moment the man who imposed it was killed. Parsi said the unsuccessful strike on Diego Garcia raises question marks whether Iran may also have other types of weapons, that we did not believe that they have, that they might be using other weapons, unknown weapons, for 22 days. This war has been fought on the assumption that the intelligence picture of Iran's military capability was roughly accurate. Friday morning destroyed that assumption. Iran has at least one weapon system that U.S. intelligence did not fully account for. The question nobody can answer tonight is, what else does it have that we do not know about? Now, Britain, because the timing of this attack created a political crisis in London that is unlike anything Keir Starmer has faced since taking office. It is understood that the attack took place before the British government announced that the United States could use British bases to launch strikes on Iranian sites involved in attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran fired missiles at Diego Garcia before knowing that Britain had just authorized the U.S. to use British bases for Hormuz's operations. Iran was already targeting Diego Garcia. Then Britain made it an even bigger target by officially putting it in the war. Iran's foreign minister said Keir Starmer is putting British lives in danger by allowing UK bases to be used for aggression against Iran. The Prime Minister is also facing political pressure at home over his decision to extend the use of UK bases by the Americans, putting British lives in danger. That is the Iranian foreign minister directly threatening the United Kingdom. Not America, not Israel, Britain, a country that has tried to stay on the margins of this war, that refused to let its Cyprus base be used for offensive operations, that has been carefully calibrating its involvement to avoid becoming a direct target. One of the missiles fired at Diego Garcia was shot down by a U.S. warship while the other failed in flight. Britain condemned Iran's reckless attacks after the unsuccessful attempt to hit the base. Reckless, that is Britain's official word. A country that has absorbed Iranian drone attacks on its Cyprus base, that has watched its ships routed around the Strait of Hormuz, that has seen its LNG supplies from Qatar disrupted for 5 years, is now calling Iran reckless for firing at the base it just authorized America to use for military operations. And at home, Starmer is facing something he did not expect when he made the decision to open British bases. Starmer spoke to the Croat president on Saturday morning, reiterating that RAF Akrotiri will not be used by the U.S. to target Iranian missile sites. He also spoke to the Crown Prince of Bahrain to discuss the war. Starmer is drawing lines. Cyprus cannot be used for offensive operations. Diego Garcia can be used for defensive operations. Arif Fairford can be used for strikes. He is trying to be partly in the war without being fully in it. And Iran is responding by targeting every British asset in the theater, regardless of whether Starmer considers it offensive or defensive. Now, the most important context that connects the Diego Garcia attack to everything else happening in this war right now, Israel said attacks against Iran will increase significantly in the coming week, hours after Trump said he was considering winding down military operations in the Middle East. Trump says winding down. Israel says increasing significantly. These two statements were made on the same day by supposed allies running the same operation. The gap between them has never been wider. Trump's rebuke of his transatlantic allies comes despite the president saying the U.S. was getting very close to meeting its objectives and that the country is considering winding down military efforts in the Middle East, getting very close to meeting its objectives. And Iran responded to that statement by firing intercontinental range missiles at the most secret American base on the planet. Trump issued a 48-hour ultimatum to Iran in a post on Truth Social on Saturday, warning the U.S. would strike its power plants if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. 48 hours strike power plants if Hormuz is not reopened. That ultimatum expires Sunday evening, and as of right now, Hormuz is not open. Daily transit calls through the Strait of Hormuz have tumbled to nearly zero from highs above 120 seen earlier this year, according to data analyzed by Charles Schwab. Zero from 120 transits per day to zero. The waterway that carries 1/5 of the world's oil has essentially stopped functioning for 22 days. And Iran, which just fired missiles twice as far as it admitted it could fire, is being told it has 48 hours to reopen it or its power plants will be destroyed. Iran's answer to that ultimatum came through its foreign minister. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran is ready to facilitate the passage of Japanese vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, adding that negotiations with Japan on the issue are ongoing. Japan can pass, America cannot. Iran is now selectively opening the strait by nationality. Japan negotiated. Japan gets through. America's allies get nothing until they separately negotiate with Tehran. This is Iran establishing a new economic and diplomatic order in the world's most important waterway. You want your ships to pass through water that runs along Iran's coast. You negotiate with Iran directly, not through Washington. Now, the Diona moment, because it happened on the same day, and it is the other story that nobody is fully connecting to the Diego Garcia attack. It marked the first time in the war that Israel's nuclear research center was targeted. Israel's secretive nuclear reactor is about 13 kilometers southeast of Diona. Both cities lie near several military sites, including Nevatim Air Base, one of the country's largest. Israeli officials said interception attempts were carried out prior to the strike, and the incident will be reviewed. Initial footage from the scene in Iraq showed a bus with its windows blown out and heavy damage to several buildings and dozens of firefighters and police responding to 2 separate impact sites. Israel's rescue services said 4 people were seriously injured, including a 4-year-old girl, and 29 were lightly injured. Diona, Israel's nuclear reactor, the facility at the heart of Israel's own nuclear program. A program Israel has never officially acknowledged. Iran targeted it on the same day it fired missiles at Diego Garcia. On the same day, Trump issued a 48-hour ultimatum about power plants, 2 nuclear-adjacent targets, one in the Indian Ocean, one in the Negev Desert, hit or attempted on the same day. Iran is no longer fighting this war only in the conventional military dimension. It is sending messages about what it considers legitimate targets, and a country's nuclear research center is now on that list. Let me put it all together and tell you exactly where things stand right now. Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, 4,000 kilometer, twice its stated range limit. One was intercepted by a U.S. warship. One malfunctioned. Neither hit. The base is operational, but the capability has been demonstrated. The range limit that KA imposed in 2017 died with him on February 28th. His successor has now shown the world what Iran can actually reach. And what Iran can actually reach includes Central Europe, U.S. ships positioned 3,000 kilometers away, and NATO bases across the Eastern Hemisphere. Russia and China are most likely providing the targeting intelligence that made the Diego Garcia strike attempt possible, according to analysts. Since Iran does not have sufficient satellite coverage of the Indian Ocean to generate its own targeting data for that area, Russia and China, providing targeting data for a missile strike on the most secret American military base in the world, 3 countries. A war that started as a U.S.-Israel operation against Iran is now a conflict where Russia is feeding intelligence. China is potentially providing components, and Iran is firing missiles at targets that were supposed to be beyond anyone's reach. Trump says winding down. Israel says increasing significantly. The 48-hour ultimatum expires Sunday evening. Hormuz is at 0 transits. Iran just hit something it was not supposed to be able to reach. A 4-year-old girl is seriously injured in Iraq. Diona has been targeted for the first time. And somewhere in the Indian Ocean, a U.S. warship is sitting at the spot where it shot down a missile that was aimed at the most secret American base on the planet. There has been speculation that Iran could be capable of strikes beyond the claimed 1,050-mile limit. They just had not shown their cards. The attack on Diego Garcia would seem to be that moment. They showed their cards, and the hand they were holding is bigger than anyone in Washington planned for when the first bombs fell on February 28th. Before I go, I need to hear from you. Iran fired missiles 4,000 kilometers. Diego Garcia is the same distance from Iran as Central Europe. Do you think Iran will now target European cities or NATO bases if this war continues? B. The man who imposed Iran's 2,000-kilometer missile limit was killed on day 1 of this war. His successor just fired double that range. Was removing KA the biggest strategic mistake of this entire war? C. Trump says winding down. Israel says increasing significantly. The 48-hour ultimatum expires tonight. What happens when Iran does not reopen Hormuz? And Trump has to decide whether to bomb the power plants. Drop A, B, or C in the comments right now. This is the most important military development of this entire war, and I read every single comment. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. The 48-hour ultimatum expires tonight. Tomorrow could be the most consequential day of this